Hello and welcome to the Xpress Series Quick Start video guide. I'm Al Harper, Worldwide Support Manager at Nutanix. Nutanix Xpress is a turnkey solution with storage, server, and virtualization to run nearly any application. Xpress was specifically designed for small to medium businesses to enable ease of management, lower TCO, and ensure a simple, risk-free deployment. Once we finish this video series, you should be able to unpack the block and nodes, mount the block in the rack, connect the individual nodes to your network, download the necessary installation files to your laptop, run the foundation installer, and finally, create a new cluster out of the new nodes. Once that's done, we'll take a look at Prism to make sure that we verify the system is up and running correctly, manage the system, and keep an eye out for any alerts. So before we get started, let's go ahead and talk about what comes in the box and what you're going to need to provide. So in the box, we have the actual block itself that has the nodes already installed in it. You'll have 3 or 4 nodes depending on the configuration that you've ordered. We have the bezel already installed here on the front, and then 2 rails so that we can mount the system into your rack. We also have 2 power cables that you'll need to hook it up to power it. In addition to those items, what you're going to need to provide are network cables, a switch, and a laptop that has network access. For the cables, you'll need enough that you can hook each individual node up to the switch, and one so that you can hook your laptop up to the switch. We do require that all the laptop and the nodes are in the same broadcast domain. So the easiest and best way to do this is just to use an unmanaged switch, and that's what we recommend that you use. If you're using the native Nutanix hypervisor, AHV, please note that it already comes installed on the block, so only configuration is necessary, no installation. But if you're going to be using another hypervisor, you'll want to keep that in mind. All right, so now let's gather everything together, head to your equipment or server room, and get it all installed. We do recommend that you bring a helper because this stuff is pretty heavy. Before getting started, you'll want to make sure that you have a 4-post rack like the one that we have here. You also want to make sure that it has access to adequate power, cooling, and structural support. The rail assemblies that come in the box need to be separated. To do this, you'll want to first extend the rail all the way out until it clicks. Then you'll push and hold the locking tab and continue to pull the inner rail until it fully separates from the middle and outer rail. Next, we want to attach the inner rails to the sides of the Nutanix block. Note that there's an L or an R on the rails, and this corresponds with the left or the right side of the server when viewing it from the front. You want to take the inner rail, set it on the inside of the block, and line up the square holes with the hooks. You'll then slide it forward until it clicks. Next, we want to install the outer rail on both sides of the rack. You're going to press upward on the locking tab at the rear end of the middle rail, and then push the middle rail all the way back into the outer rail. Next, we want to hang the hooks of the front of the outer rail onto the slots on the front of the rack. Then pull out the rear of the outer rail, adjusting the length as necessary until it fits within the posts of the back of the rack. Finally, we want to mount the block in the rack. Pull the middle rail from the outer rail until it locks all the way in the extended position. Next, we want to align the inner rails that are mounted on the block with the middle rails that are on your rack. Slide the inner rails into the ball bearing shuttle on the middle rails until the locking tab of the inner rail clicks into place. Finally, we press the inner rail locking tabs down simultaneously and push the block into the rack. Now you can snap your bezel in place on the front. Now that we've completed installing your block in your rack, we can connect and power up the nodes. Let's start by gathering the network cables. For a detailed diagram of all the ports on the back of your nodes, please refer to the documentation that came with your block. Now we want to connect each node to the switch. We'll do this by plugging in the topmost data-only 1 gigabit Ethernet port and connecting it up to the switch. And by the way, we recommend using Cat6 cables if you can. Next, we want to plug our laptop into the switch as well. Finally, we'll take the power cords, plug in your block, and hit the power button on the front of each of the nodes. You'll want to verify that they're powered on by the LED lights on the front of each node. That completes the hardware section of installing your Nutanix Xpress Series block. Now it's time to move on to installing and configuring the software.